We're gonna look at the Fantasy Flight version of Cosmic Encounter. A couple of expansions. I bought this used. My history with, and you'll see, the game's not fully set up, which is weird, but it's because there's so many different configurations you can use for playing this game. And I want to go over that before I kind of decide, and I figure I'd do the rules description first. First of all, if you're looking at this as like your intro to Cosmic Encounter or whatever, I mean, my video, forget it. Go look at somebody else's. I'm not the person for this. This is more just for the completeness of the games I have. I have the original Eon Cosmic Encounter. However, I only have the very original. I'm looking for it here. It's got to be kicking around somewhere. I have it not in the original edition, but when they came out with the big box edition, I was kind of excited about this because by the time I bought it, all 9, or was it 10 expansions were out, and I wanted to fill the box with them. I had played it in that original form initially, and frankly, it's kind of a pathetic game. It's hard to believe that it caught on all that well. It's got some clever ideas, but there's only a handful of powers, and there's just not a lot there. But it did catch on as an interesting idea. And maybe Eon, the guys at Eon are weird, but most of the games that they produced didn't really come out with a set of expansions right afterwards. And I don't remember if Cosmic Encounter did or not. My first experience with it was in our high school. There were a couple of games there. Was it Cosmic Encounter? No, it wasn't. No, I don't know. Maybe I bought this sucker. No, I think I bought this sucker before I played it. Anyway, it was a pretty minor, it's a pretty light little game in the original. I seem to think it was at high school, and I tried playing it once. And I wanted to buy it, along with Time War by Yaquinto. It was in like our, I don't know, we had like a talented and gifted thing, and it was in the file cabinet there. Nobody played it, and I was told, well, you can't buy it, you can borrow it. And I almost get the feeling that it was you can borrow it and not bring it back. But I couldn't do that kind of thing. Anyway, I was excited because I hadn't seen those particular games. I was already a gamer, of course, long before that. But those particular games weren't available at any of the local stores that I had. And I was really kind of keen on them. I ended up buying both of them new from one of the stores that didn't have them, and I was fine with that. The reason I wanted to buy it was like, look, the school's wasting money on this, basically, right? They spent budget and nobody does anything with them. And, anyway, that first Cosmic Encounter was not an exciting game, to be honest. It's okay. It's cute a few times. But it just doesn't have the chaos. And it's the chaos that really drove Cosmic Encounter to be something different. So when I went away to college, a couple of my friends had everything. And we would play it every now and then. And it was just, such a massively chaotic experience. We would play with 3 powers each. 1.5 times as many flares as are supposed to go in. And with all the expansions except the moons, nobody ever liked the moons. I was okay with them, but and some people insisted that they would only play if the moons were in there because they wanted that, real silliness of the game. I was unable to get all the expansions. I went to the Complete Strategist with the intention of, when I saw them there, I was like, oh, I should get these. They were $4 or $5 each. I wasn't particularly wealthy, but I could have afforded buying, the set. But they only had like 4 or 5 of the expansions. And I decided, nah, I'm going to wait until I can get them all. Because I don't want it was like, they had maybe expansion 2, 3, 8, and 9 or something like that. It was just like, such a random selection of them. I never found an opportunity where they were all present again, or even then. And then when I joined BGG and started doing these videos and stuff, I decided, you know what? I finally have the opportunity to kind of hunt them down. Well, they've gotten a lot more expensive. And one in particular, maybe 4, I don't remember, is exceedingly rare. And just, you have to pay a fortune for it. I actually ordered a complete set of Cosmic Encounter, but there were problems with it. And I worked out a return with the guy who sent it to me. He didn't represent it properly. He was perfectly fine with it, refunded me my money and everything. Sometimes I think I should have kept it, but like the backs didn't match and stuff like that. So there was a real problem with the set that he gave me or that he sold to me. And it wasn't a terrible price, but it was over $100. And then I had played the Mayfair edition of Cosmic Encounter, which was the next one that came out after the Eon edition. And that was less than exciting. Maybe if it was the first one I saw, I would have been cool with it. But it really, flares were like discardable, I think. They just didn't have the power they had in the original set. Flares were one of my most... they were one of the things I liked the most in Cosmic Encounter. This idea of a card that, like, there he is again. This is so weird. My wife would have loved this. Like, just having a chipmunk running by her window every now and then. She saw her first chipmunk here, like after we moved up here. And it was like, I don't know, it took several years here before she saw one. And I would be coming back and saying, I was on a walk and I saw a chipmunk. And it was just like she never saw one. But now to have one living right in my yard, finally, I don't know why they didn't. Kept that wood pile for a long time for them. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, I ended up, I was just not thrilled with the Mayfair one. It was kind of like a watered down version, and it was not very chaotic. There was an attempt to keep the chaos out of the game. I'm giving a lot of history here because this is a game I have a lot of history with, especially in terms of trying to acquire. And then, I don't know, somehow, some reason or another, I bought the Hasbro one, which I think is basically the Eon initial one, and I don't think they went anywhere with it in terms of expansions or anything, so I'm kind of like, well, that was a bummer. I think I was trying to get a hold of this one, the Fantasy Flight, because I had heard good things about it. People who had played the original said, yeah, it's got a lot of the spirit. And some people like the Mayfair one. Some people liked it better. This feels like it's got a lot of that chaos. It's nailed down a little bit more. There was a real problem with the original one, where like, oh yeah, this power you can't use in a game with these powers. I don't see any of that here. Honestly, I don't think any of that was necessary in CE. If you had a massively overpowered player, you could usually take them down through the diplomacy that's inherent in the game. And if you couldn't, if they were all that massively overpowered, it was over like that. And it was like, okay, let's play again. So yeah, and the way they were worded was like, don't play in a game with, as though those two powers were just anathema to each other. I think they've cleaned all of that out, done, made sure that there wasn't anything that was just broke the game in terms of not being able to know what to do if those two powers were present together. I think there were a couple like that. So let's look over what we have. First of all, this is the warp. It's got two sides to it. I'm not quite sure why, but with this side, the numbers on it indicate the number of foreign colonies that you've established, which is your victory condition. And in the base game, that victory condition is 5. This, I found out yesterday, is the space nipple, I guess. This is the hyperspace jump. You use this to point to where you're going to attack. For example, like this, and it indicates you're trying to establish a colony on that planet or something like that. One of the most important things in the game, and there's a whole hell of a lot of them, just like in the original, at least if you get these expansions. But this is something that's nice about this. The original box gave you a fair number of these. These are player powers, individual powers that describe a special capability, when it can be used, and what it does. I haven't looked at them too carefully, but some of them are names of original ones, and I bet you they're the original power still there. And those are each represented by a card in here, which is the flare for that power. And the way you handle these, the assignment of powers is you deal out the flares. In the base game, you deal out 2 per player, and they pick one of those 2, and then both the flares go into the deck. There's something with deck construction in this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, where they're trying to keep a balance of what the composition of the deck is like. This is the Destiny pile. This used to be a series of discs that you would flip over. I think cards is easier to shuffle and whatnot. And basically that indicates which player you have to attack. And each player has a set of cards that are shuffled in there. There's a wild card. There may be something else. I don't know. This is sort of the main deck of the game, the Encounter deck, or something like that. I don't know what it's called. But it has cards that have a number on them, which are used in fighting. It has event-type cards, or they're called artifacts now in this. I don't know. It's got negotiates, which are a specific type of encounter. It's got, I'm looking for one. Well, it's got these reinforcements, which add to the strength, which I believe are played after everything's revealed. They've got kickers, which are played before anybody plays anything down. That was something, I don't remember if that was added in an expansion or not, but it basically gives you a multiplier to your strength. And often your goal is to have the higher total number of strength, which is going to be added up the number of spaceships you have involved, both yours and allies, the attack value you have multiplied by a kicker if need be, a reinforcement added in. But there's a lot of chaos that comes in here, including the player powers. There's a fair amount of game state in this that has to be paid attention to. You have your hand of cards, which is complex. You have kind of the board state, which isn't that bad, and this kind of helps. In the original, you didn't have anything that kept track of who had how many colonies, which meant you had to kind of scan the board and look around for that regularly. If this was lying, what do you do, though? If like somebody failed to move something and you thought they were winning when they're not, or worse, you didn't notice they were winning because it wasn't recorded properly. But the big thing is actually those individual powers that the players have. Those can be taken away, by the way. You have 5 home planets. If you drop below 3, you end up, like if you don't have ships on at least 3 of them, you end up losing your player power, which is a huge problem. Okay, we got things that look like this deck. Wait, really? What's going on? I'm confused. Yeah, see? Oh, because these have to shuffle in as flares. That's why. Okay, yeah. So they do have to have the same back. And the same occurs with these other two decks. This is a deck that was added in one of the expansions as they start adding players. Now, because I have only 2 of the 3 expansions that were available at the time, I think I only can hold 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. The original game, back in the day, the one that I have, you know, sort of 2 copies of because of the stupid, whatever version it is, Hasbro. That original game only held 4 players, and the expansions added 2 more. And that was important because the warp was on a hex, and you had kind of player boards instead of these things. So it could only handle 6 players. There was no way to easily expand it to more than 6. Now you can make your own pieces, and you know, there was no reason why it couldn't be set up this way. It was just the component design originally was kind of limited, at least in one sense, to 6 players. I'm running out of battery. This is gonna be pretty big. So I will probably break this intro into 2 with a pure rules intro coming later. I won't read through the rules. I'll just give a brief overview based on the sequence of play. Because there are a lot of special cases that come up in this game, okay? And some of them you kind of have to figure out what actually happens. Although I think these rules are attempting to be a little bit more more solid. I don't know. We'll do it pretty quickly. Okay. But there's a lot of pieces too that are like well, there's not a lot, but there are pieces that are like 1 power specific. Like this stuff. 1 power gets this extra stuff. Okay, so in addition to this deck, we have decks that look a lot like it. This one is the large number of players deck. If you have if you have more than 6 players, you're supposed to shuffle this in. Creates a little bit more randomness. It's an interesting idea because if this deck is, you know, depleted too easily or whatever, you have a little bit more predictive power, etc., about what's in there. You also, there's just a number of reasons you'd want more cards with more players, but why wouldn't you want more cards with less players? That's a good question. I'm not really sure why, if they're the same kind of composition, that you wouldn't want to shuffle these in. Well, here's why. Because if you're only putting 2 flares in per player, the amount of flares is getting watered down by these extra cards being put in. And the same goes with this deck, which can also be used that same way. Okay, what about flares? Well, nowhere in these rules does it talk about using multiple powers. I think all the way back in that basic edition, I can't find it now. Fuck. Where did I hide it? I know, yeah, right there. I think all the way back in that basic edition, they came up with the idea of, yes, you could have more than 1 power per player. Now, there were only 16 powers, so that was kind of goofy. But basically, they seem to have thrown that out. And that was one of the coolest aspects of the chaos. And I suspect a lot of us are going to be tempted to throw more than 1 power in at the same time, just because that's the game we remember and love. That's the level of chaos we remember having. Anyway, the original game just added more cards as more players were added, without changing any of the rules. And so that's part of why we did this. Let's multiply the amount of flares that are put in, was to make the deck a little bit richer, because flares are pretty good cards. But you don't want too many flares, because you'll just be discarding your hand all the time. And one of the goals in the game tended to be to try to figure out ways that you keep your good flares so you didn't have to discard your hand ever. By the way, playing this is going to be a bitch. this is not a game that really lends itself to solitaire. There's a lot of hidden information in terms of the cards that you have in your hand, in terms of how you play, because you're going to be playing a competition against each other. And I really don't know if I can even play it solo. I've done so before. It really doesn't, you know, I don't know. Maybe I can't. But I want to give the video for it, and I'll try to play, I guess. This third deck, which is not well defined, but it has the right number of cards, comes up in one of the expansions. Now this is the reward deck, which is a variant. There's a point in the game where you're allowed to take rewards for defending an opponent's planet, an opponent's base. And normally you get your cards from the main deck, maybe the combined deck. Here you'd be getting the option to take these cards, which are richer in general, don't contain any flares, and don't contain the most extreme highs on cards. So if all you need is a certain kind of moderate card for your hand, this becomes the deck you'd want to pull from. And there's an option to just shuffle this in anyway, creating more chaos and watering down the amount of flares that are present. Talk a lot about flares, they're important to me. Okay, I guess let's take a look at whether I've missed anything first of all. I've missed some of these tokens because they're kind of weird. So like these are cosmic tokens. They're just markers. They're used in a number of different specific places. However, there's also grudge tokens, which I'm assuming are in here with these duckies as well. Yeah, here they are. Which are used by one particular power. And then these are, again, three things that are used, I guess, with the tech cards. Hey, I didn't explain the tech cards. These are absolutely new to this, and they came out in the first formulation of it, which I find particularly weird. It's like they added something. You know, they didn't just put together. One of the nice things about the Mayfair box, which this is similar to, was that it gave you a rich and full game, which again, that first edition really didn't feel like it was. It didn't feel like it gave you a real clue as to what Cosmic Encounter would play like. Well, not only does this give you a lot of the old Cosmic Encounter, it gives you this new option, which is tech cards, which essentially you can send ships off to try to start researching, and they will collect up points and get you some new capability that you retain. Which, well, or maybe as a one use. All very interesting. Anyway. Apparently these come from the tech cards. They also, I only saw two of these in my set. Not that. Okay. There were a couple of flares in the original game that were both well-liked and despised as being very, very chaotic. One is the Filch flare. I believe the Filch Wild is the thing. You can basically cheat, and it's not just do anything, but if you're caught, you have to give back what you were caught taking, and you pay a small penalty. It was a pretty powerful card, and especially powerful because, like, sometimes you'd see, like, everybody's away or something, and the deck is missing. And if they don't catch you, so caught was one of the issues, right? I mean, if you've got a stack of cards this big in front of you, aren't you just automatically caught? Well, the group that I played with first, I think kind of took it as you had to be caught in the act of doing it. And it's not really well defined here. Yeah, it says caught in the act. Yeah, so like if everybody's looking away, you could just take the entire deck, you know? And now you're invulnerable. It would be very, very hard to deal with somebody who has too big a hand of cards. And it was possible to have a larger than initial deal cards. Schizoid, I'm looking at the wild here. Okay, this one doesn't bother me as much. At the end of any encounter, you can switch home systems and therefore player colors with any other players of your choice. Afterwards, discard this flare. What was cool about this one was you could let anybody win the game, and as long as you kept that Schizoid wild in your hand, and you would, you know, manipulate the game to make sure you had it in there, you could just say, you know, right at the end of the encounter, just before they're declaring their win, you could just say, no, I won, I'm Schizoid. So you can see why both of these were, you know, maybe hated, maybe loved, whatever. But yeah, that's one of the facets here. So one of the configuration choices is how many powers and how they interact, you know, like not spelled out in this new rule book, but because of the way I used to play, there's sort of a how many different flares do you put in the game, and that might be factored by what you do with these cards, and also how you know, whether you're going to allow multiple powers. And I'm so tempted to do multiple powers because I feel like the game is just missing everything without them. It's that, see, that's the thing. Yes, you have a huge number of powers here in this box. I don't know. I don't know how many it is, but it's big. It's like 60 or 80 or something. But the combinatorics of like letting somebody have 2 powers each, well, you've just squared the amount of powers you have, right? And 3 powers each, it is squaring, isn't it? Yeah, essentially. It's factorial. 3 powers each makes it even worse. And you just get such humongous numbers of combinations that you can have that, like, the games truly become absolutely different. They also become more chaotic. There is a little bit of a problem, which I'm iffy about, which is and I used to come up with ideas for this. So you lose 3 planets, you lose all your powers. I kind of like the idea of you lose a planet, you lose a power. You lose a second planet, you lose a second power. You lose a third planet, you lose your third power. You're at the place you would be at for that. So it gives you a real reason, a real investment, not just to defend 3 planets, but to make sure that you have bases on all your planets. Now, some of your powers might not be that exciting, so you know you might be willing to give them away. But that gives you some flexibility in an interesting sort of way. All right. Sure, let's start with the rules. I'm gonna go over them in a really loosey-goosey sort of way, not reading them so much. So, regrouping. At the start of an encounter, yeah, now here I am reading them. One of the offensive ships is retrieved from the warp and placed on one of their colonies. If they have no colonies, they get to put it on the hyperspace. So yeah, each turn you get a dude back. I wonder if it has the void still. Destiny. You flip one of these cards over, and that tells you who you've got to attack. Wait, are these cards? Yeah, okay. And they've got a lot of words on them that all pretty much say the same thing. If it is your own color, you can choose to draw again. If it's anyone else's color, you have to attack that person's home planets. If it's your own color and you don't want to, and someone else has bases on your planets, you could attack them on your planets. Whoever you're attacking that color, right? Like if I draw yellow, I am attacking one of yellow's planets, and they are the defender, even if they don't have pieces there and other people do. The wild card allows you to select. There's a special. What's this? Okay, it tells you what happens. And a lot of the game is that one. And then there's a very specific question here, which I've already covered, which is that if I draw yellow, I can't try to knock red out of yellow's system. This is important because it makes it possible for someone to start working their way up to victory. Otherwise, you would always be taking down the leader, and it would be just too easy. Okay, then you're allowed to pick from 1 to 4 of your ships in general and put them here. And those are strength points that you have towards you. You've pointed this at some defensive planet, which has ships or not. That ship is the defensive value of it. And those are the 2 main players. Everyone else is going to be called a bystander. At this point, I believe the attacker first announces if they're inviting anyone to ally with them. Their allies place their pieces up in here too, and stacking. This is the little ships are really kind of neat. The components are kind of neat, especially well, the original cards were good too. They were poker quality. So anyone that you ally, the bonus they get if you win is they get to land on the planet with you. Then the defender is allowed to announce anyone they want allying. The bonus the defender gets for allying is if they win, the defending players, who will be placed on this ring down here, get rewards and cards in basic from this deck. Could be from the special reward deck, or that could be shuffled in, or whatever. Okay. Now, at the beginning of your cycle of turns, if you don't have any encounter cards, you expose your hand to show that you don't. You discard all your cards, and you draw a new, I think, 7-card hand? Eight card. I think it used to be 7. I don't know. Okay. For the defender, as soon as they're picked as the defender, they have to have an encounter card, which is an attack or negotiation card, in their hand, or else they reveal their hand, and if it's if it doesn't have any, they discard it and they draw a new 8-card hand. It is possible to do more than one attack in a turn, but each attack is likely to generate to lose you an encounter card, and it's hard to get cards back, although there are powers that do this in the midst of your attack, which, if you end up running out of encounter cards, your turn ends. Now, normally you're only allowed 2 attacks, though, but it's possible to do more, I think. I don't know. So anyway, each player is going to place an encounter card, and they could declare a kicker first for where kickers are added in, face down. And then they reveal them. And then they calculate out the value of their complete attack and defense. Now, in the basics, there are negotiation cards and attack cards. I don't think there's anything other than those that can be used for encounters. Very simply, if one player plays an attack card and the other player plays a negotiation card, the one who's tried to negotiate loses the encounter. They will lose all their pieces, but they get compensation. For each piece they lose to the warp, they get to draw a card from the other player's hand. Of course, if the other player doesn't have any cards in their hand, you get screwed. If both players reveal negotiate cards, they have, I think, a minute to come up with a deal. You're allowed to trade cards and or allow his opponent to establish one colony on any one planet where the player already has a colony. It is possible through this mechanism, or through combat as well, for multiple players to win the game at once. I don't think it's possible, except in the two-player game, for everyone to win the game. Okay. If either player reveals the morph card, there's one morph card, but there's a second one added in an expansion. This allows you to duplicate the opponent's encounter card when revealed. Yeah, okay. I mean, since there's like 140, if you know he's got that, that could be very powerful. It does give you the bonus of getting a negotiation against his negotiation if he plays that. Otherwise, do we have the basic case here? Yeah. Both players reveal attack cards. Essentially, you add the spaceships on one side, including allies, and the number on the attack card. A kicker will multiply the number on the attack card. Reinforcements can be added to give more points, blah, blah, blah. One side or the other will have more points. Well, not necessarily. You could have a tie. And that I'm not seeing here. I think defense wins ties, but the player with the higher total, yeah, ties go to the defense. Okay, so somebody will always win. If the offense wins, everything that was defending gets sent into the warp. Special powers notwithstanding. It doesn't affect anybody else on that planet. And everybody in the attacker's thing lands on the planet and has a base there now. Now, if you already had a base, it doesn't really help you to get another base, so you probably don't want to join the attack unless you have some weird reason. If the defense wins, all the attacking ships are put into the void, and the defensive allies go back to their own colonies, but they get the reward off of it. Okay, let's go back to if the offense wins. If the offensive player wins, and it was his first attack of the turn, he gets to make another attack if he wishes to. But if he doesn't have any encounter cards at this point, he kind of can't. He could show his hand and show that he can't, but he doesn't get new cards for it. Okay, what about deals? If the deal is made, it is just followed. Now, you can promise things that don't impact the deal. All kind of table talk in this game, generally. If you fail the deal, everybody loses 3 ships of their choice to the warp. Now, a deal is counted as a success if to allow the offensive player to go again. It's possible to win at the same time. I talked about losing alien powers. There are cards that zap powers. Those essentially, the power has to have the word used in it to indicate that it's like, this is new. This is new. I think the power, I think where it says used is going to be things where you directly attempt to do something with the power. Used to be the cosmic zaps got rid of the power for the turn. So Macron, his pieces counted as 4 in the original. You cosmic zapped them, they didn't. I'm not sure that's going to be the same in this. They may have worded that one to work the same, but I think that there are some that have continuing powers that are no longer zappable. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I loved the idea of being able to get rid of this. They have some specifics about how timing is handled. They tried to bake timing in, which this was not done in the original, by saying, hey, this is his ability is only an offense. He has an ability to destroy opponents' hands. What the fuck? You loot the opponent's cards when you win, as the offense. Wow. Wow! Their whole hand goes away, but you get some of it. You do not want this guy to win. Now, it says use this power, so it could be zapped, but it's mandatory on offense. Okay. I don't know how mandatory it can be, like you can't force somebody to remember something. Let me get back. I'm going to catch these main points. The rules are pretty light, and I mostly know them. Okay. Driving out foreign colonies. If you draw your own color, or a wild, you can point the hyperspace cone at a planet in your own system, which has an enemy colony on it, and try to attack that enemy colony. And it works the same as otherwise. Nobody else can do this. Nobody else can clear your system of infectious enemies. Home planets without colonies. If you have no colony on a home planet that you're defending, you just have 0 ships. You're allowed to take ships off a colony and abandon the colony, but you can't go back except normally. Specifics there. Something I'm missing, which is on your turn, if you pick your own color, if you have a completely empty planet, you can just land ships there within your own home system. Artifact cards, they can't be played as encounter cards, but can be played as other times. I think the zapping is kind of like that. Reinforcement cards add points to it. Flares. Flares are interesting. Now, I didn't talk about these too much. Flares have a complicated set of things on them, right? And they have 2 capabilities. One capability is if you don't have that power active. And you don't have the power active if you've lost it due to planets being knocked out. The second is if you have that power active, you're able to do the super capability, the wild. And wild might be more powerful than super. It's not a guarantee of that. Super just gives you a bonus that links only to the player who has that capability, who has that power already. Flares are interesting. They can be, they don't get discarded when they're played. Most other things get discarded when they're played. Maybe not technology. They sit in your normal hand, and in this version of the game, you can play each flare once in, I think, an encounter. Let's see here. Oh, it's in the italics, which immediately to me means ignore. A flare cannot be used more than once per encounter. Right. So each time the destiny pile flips, that's a new encounter. And you can use no more than 1 flare per encounter. That's new to this system. And they give freewheeling flares here, where you can use as many flares as you wish during each encounter. That's how the game used to be played. You can still use each flare only once per encounter. I like that. Otherwise, so what's neat about that is it makes hoarding flares cool, right? And to me, that was a lot of the game, was how can I manipulate this game so that I can have the flares that I want and have them stay in my hand. That's just my taste. Some other variants: 4 planets, hidden powers. This is an interesting one. We used to play with this sometimes. Requires a little bit of trust. But yeah, the power is just face down, and you don't know what's being added to the deck and whatnot. Rotating power. You draw a new alien sheet at the start of your turn. You can either choose to keep the old or new, depending, discarding the other. Wow. I've never heard of that being done. I don't like it. That's weird. But that's kind of the replacement for the multiple powers. And they may have gotten in too much trouble trying to do multiple powers, but I'm so tempted. Tech. Tech is new. You shuffle the technology deck and each player gets 2. They look at their 2 cards, pick one, discard the other next to the deck. At the start of your regroup phase, before your offense retrieves a ship from the warp, you may research your tech card. To research it, you take one of your ships from any of your colonies and move it on top of your tech card. It's now researching that tech. Once a ship is researching a tech, it cannot be removed from that tech card until the tech card is completed. Now, we don't have a description of the tech card here. They're not very good at giving breakdowns of the cards. And in this, I think it's particularly weird. I think this is the cost of the card, but I've got one with an X. Didn't I? I swear I saw one with an X. Hold on. Different ones with an X as the cost. This one makes sense. The canceled tech must have a research cost equal to or less than the number of ships researching this tech. It's going to look a little weird because normally when we'll talk about it, but normally when you research a tech, I think you take it into your pile once it's researched. The Gluon mines. Do not reveal this tech until used. You may reveal and discard this tech as the defense after encounter cards are selected. But before they're revealed, to send 1 attacking ship to the warp for each... Oh, no, so yeah. So the X is variable. Okay. Completing a tech card. You turn the tech card face up. If there's a number of ships researching it equal to or greater than the tech card's research number, you completed it. You return the researching ships to any of your colonies. The completed tech card remains in play and can now be used. I guess it stays face up. If the number of ships on the tech card is lower than the research number, you abandon the tech and your ships go back. So it is possible to get your ships back, but you have to give up the tech. Okay. Getting new tech cards. If you're eligible to have a second encounter during your turn, you can give up the opportunity to have a second encounter and instead obtain a new tech card. You draw a number of tech cards equal to your current foreign colonies plus 1, select one, and discard the others. There's no limit to how many tech cards you can have. You can be researching multiple ones. It's really inefficient, but whatever. Some things will allow you to lose ships. You can take them off the tech card for that. That's the base game. I'm going to pause for a little bit because, well, one, my batteries are beginning to run down. But I want to go over what the 2 different Cosmic Incursion and Cosmic Alliance add to this briefly. Let's take a look at the 2 expansions I have Cosmic Incursion, I think, was the first one. More stuff. Another player, which allows you to play with 6. I guess the original allowed 5. But Cosmic Quakes. If you have to draw from the Cosmic deck, that's the... Not, this is just flares right now. That's the main deck, which would include the flares and whatever from these additionals, whatever. And both the Cosmic deck and the discard pile are empty. Then a Cosmic Quake occurs. All the players discard their hands and get a new 8-card hand. This is an interesting thing, because it is, again, possible for someone to get lots of the deck, especially with the fake filch, with the old filch flare. You know, they take a lot of the deck. I don't remember if these existed in the original game, but yeah, I mean, it is a mechanism for restoring some sanity if things get off the rails. They added some things: negative attack cards, crooked deals, which they give. When a player collects compensation after playing a crooked deal, he gets an extra card. If he fails to make a deal, that player loses 1 less ship, while his opponent loses an extra. Second morph, if the 2 morphs are played against each other, they both lose. Hacker or kicker cards. You play it face down before the encounter cards are selected, so you have to announce that you're playing a kicker. Rifts allows you to retrieve ships from the warp. And if you steal a rift as compensation, or from another game effect, the rift detonates, causing the thieving player to lose a number of ships equal to the rift's value, because they have a number of them. And then they suggest dealing the reward deck separately into here, which honestly I actually suspect is a good idea. This is not that easy to tell from that. And that brings you something closer to the old game. But again, if you're adding cards to the main deck, first of all, you don't have the Cosmic Quake, which actually is kind of an interesting mechanism. And flares, you're going to have to put, I think, a little bit more flare in. Or else you lose some of the capability there. By the way, I don't know if he's in this one. In the original game, Alan Emmerich is in the playtester group, which I can totally see. He used to run the auctions. He ran Victory Point Games. He used to run the auctions at Consim World Expo. He's a funny guy. Well, was. He unfortunately is dead now, but... yeah, I knowing him, I can totally see him being a Cosmic Encounter person who enjoyed the original, and I can see where, you know, he would have been a good input into this. What about Cosmic Alliance? More aliens, more cards. We have a large group, which is meant if you're playing with more than 6, with 6 or more players, I think, or more than 6 or something like that. Excuse me. Another player is added. The Horde tokens. This is 1 alien, and they get little rubber duckies. I don't know. They put the Cosmic Quakes in here again. See, here's the weird thing. The Cosmic Quakes is not in the original game. But I think with more players, and if you don't add these expansion decks in, they become a serious factor. Got this Team Cosmic Encounter variant. I didn't even really look at this. You randomize the teams. I didn't really look at it. I'm most interested in how you win. In order to win, each player on a team must either gain enough foreign colonies to win or complete an alternate victory condition. The game does not end until both players have completed a victory condition. I've never seen this in play. It may have existed in the original somewhere. Not very appealing, but again, to me, and maybe in that third expansion that I don't have, and I know there's more that have come out since then, they've added the multi-powers concept, although I'm pretty sure that was in the very original game. And even with this game, with the amount of powers they had, I think they could easily have done that. All right, that's all we got. I'm going to do a little bit of thinking about how I want to set this up or whatever. We managed to get all the rules in there. Again, it's not a complicated game, which is why I didn't want to go through the rules the way I normally do, where I'm, going through them with a ruler, or, with a fine-tooth comb or whatever. I don't like how they're written. Lots of pictures, glossy paper, blah, blah, blah. But, I know the game already at its core, so it didn't provide too much of a challenge, although I did have to read, find some things that were different or whatever. Okay. Let's send this up.